Welcome back to another episode of the Innovate on Purpose podcast, hosted by Matt Mueller,
best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator and Rethink Retail's top retail expert.
We can help retail leaders find clarity so they can grow their businesses purposefully.
We will uncover mindful tips, innovative solutions, and purposeful leadership advice and strategies that you can apply immediately to your retail innovation. Are you ready to innovate on purpose?
Hey, before we jump into the episode today, I just wanted to say thank you for hitting the play button. You being here fires me up, and I cannot wait to share with you the insights that are going to make a difference in your business. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and leave a review so I can reach as many retail leaders as possible. They too need to hear this. Okay, let's do it. I am an innovation strategist that helps retailers and CPG companies discover the insights that drive innovation and strategy within the organization. And today, I really wanted to talk about some consumer trends that we should be watching out for in 2025, as well as focusing in on how do you find those trends. I'll give you an inside look at exactly how I find trends and what do I do to leverage those trends to build innovative solutions for my clients. And I always found that the deli captured these moving trends really well. Like if you want to see what's happening in convenience or happening in plant-based or whatever the trend may be, it usually starts off in the deli before anywhere else in food. Those deli-focused trends, but how they're going to impact the rest of the store and the rest of the industry. So we're going to cover 3 trends today with this framework that I have been having my eye on for a while. And I will share with you why I think you should be looking at these trends as well. So we're going to look at plant-based, we're going to look at ethically sourced and natural options, and then we're going to go to the tried and true, but ever-changing trend of convenience. Before we dive into the particular trends for 2025 that I've been looking at, I wanted to share with you just what I used to use on the innovation team and what I use currently with my current clients, the Get Smart trend assessment. And what we want to do is before we ever start to innovate or work towards a new product or a new service, we always wanted to make sure that we got smart on the topic, right? So yeah, we knew that we needed to focus in on convenience. Absolutely. That's something that we need to focus in on. That's a no-brainer. But we have to just leave all of our assumptions at the door. We have to be more mindful of what's happening in market, what's happening with consumers, so we can then make smart decisions on using that trend for our advantage. And that was the focus. And if I came in with the assumption that, okay, well, convenience means that my consumers want things fast, that might be a good assumption. It might be a bad assumption. The thing is, that is my thought process on this. I need to leave that, check it at the door, and start fresh and really think about how is the market defining convenience? How are my consumers defining convenience? Because it might not be fast service that equals convenience. It could actually mean that convenience is a fully prepared meal that gives me flavor-focused ingredients that are going to give me a better meal for my family. So not necessarily did it mean it was fast. I love to bring teams together and have, cross-functional, let's get the marketing department, the operations, the sales team all together into one room, the innovation team all into this one room, and let's focus in on creating the future for this product, creating the future for this service, and having them go through this Get Smart exercise before we even begin to think about how we might leverage or might move forward. We have to start getting into that space of being more present in this moment and say, okay, well, what are the things that are really important to this trend? So when we look at the Get Smart trend, what we are looking for are these 5 different aspects that we put out there to get everyone really smart. And the first one is that what are we seeing in market? That's key, right? So what are the things that we're seeing in market that show that this trend is something that we should be looking at, right? So if we were determining that, hey, we really need to focus in on convenience and we really need to focus in on plant-based today, okay, we're going to get smart on those 2 topics and we're going to figure out exactly what's happening in these 5 areas. The first one is, what are we seeing in market? The second is, what are we seeing in consumer behavior? The third is, what does this mean for us? Fourth is, what are our barriers to adoption and scale? And then lastly, what's the future outlook for our category based off of all of this information that we're seeing here? And if we were to look at those 5 aspects, we can then get really nuanced in that trend. So we can now all of a sudden be experts within that space for the rest of that day. If you were to say do a innovation workshop or strategy workshop with your team, you could take this Get Smart and then use it in the start of the day to really get everybody focused in and say, hey, okay, this is what we're seeing in market. Let's talk about that. This is what we're seeing from consumer behavior. Let's talk about that. What can you add? What are your thoughts from this? What does this spark? And when we start doing it that way, that's going to give us a much more productive day moving forward because we are all coming together to focus in on getting smart together. All right. So we're going to talk about our first trend, which is going to be plant-based. This is a space that I've been looking at for quite some time, and it's extremely interesting to me. So I spoke at Plant-Based World Expo just over a year ago. It was great to be able to spend some time with the plant-based industry, especially the manufacturers of all these amazing new products that are coming out. It's amazing to see the growth of plant-based over the last 10 years, and it's continuing to grow. It's not stopping. It's amazing to see just how ubiquitous plant-based is coming into the industry. But now it is definitely time to start thinking about how is this trend evolving, right? Because coming up into a store, I spoke about at the event when I keynoted was like, look, everyone's doing plant-based. You can't just rest on the claim that you're plant-based anymore. You can't just put, the burger patties in the case and say, hey, this is plant-based and expect that consumers are going to pick it up because they want plant-based. Because there's a package right next to yours that says plant-based on it. So now there's competition, right? It's becoming ubiquitous. So now how do you get to that next layer of really breaking out in this category? And the things that we discussed in that day were, about finding what are the consumer benefits? Like, why are people eating plant-based? It's just not good enough to be plant-based anymore. You have to really dig a little bit deeper on the consumer behavior to understand why they're having plant-based. So is it for health? Is there a particular piece of health that they're trying to dive into? Is it digestive health? Is it that they're just looking to lose weight? And making sure that you get your product down into the weeds and the marketing and the messaging and the claims to what is important to customers is going to allow you to differentiate within that space. But that's kind of how we saw the trend going a year ago. So let's do this. Let's look at the Get Smart. Now, the first thing that we want to look at is what are we seeing in market in plant-based in 2024 that we should be thinking about as we move forward into 2025. So we're seeing a growth in plant-based deli slices, which is, really, really big. Actually spent some time with Armored Fresh at an event recently at the Pizza Tomorrow Summit in Orlando. And it was really amazing just to see the work that they're doing. Their fresh sliced cheeses that they have, they're making grilled cheeses out of them and really great product. They're expanding on flavor. They're expanding on their technology of how that cheese is getting a nice stretch on it. And they even opened up a grilled cheese restaurant in New York City, which I cannot wait to get to. Now they have some real competition that's also out there. Thinking about like Unreal as another brand. They have deli meat slices, right? So they have corned beef and turkey slices. And I guess I should be using the air quotes there on those products because they're not real meat. It's plant-based. Then we have more interesting, like boutique-y, I want to say, kind of brands as well, where it's just they're going a little bit further than just, hey, this is deli meat alternative or deli cheese alternative. We have Plantcraft, which sells deli loaves and can actually be offered in deli cases, which is really interesting. So they are not only just doing the pre-slice that we're seeing from Unreal and Armored Fresh, but they are actually going directly into the deli case to mimic deli meat. So they actually have like sausages and bolognas and hams that look like that has the shape of those products, but are plant-based, of course. Then we're also seeing another brand called Field Roast, which is really unique and interesting. It was definitely one of the ones that when I was looking at that brand and doing some discovery there, their flavors were really unique. And they were kind of moving away from, hey, we're a meat alternative to, we're just a good tasting product. You should try us. And we're healthier, by the way. Some of their unique flavors were like smoked tomato and lentil, or no, it was smoked tomato. And then another flavor was lentil and sage. Like, so just really interesting flavors that you might want to try. It does kind of like pique your curiosity when you hear these different flavors. And when you see private label getting into the action of plant-based, that's when you know it has arrived, because private label is usually the last to go. It's much harder to get a private label product into your stores because this comes down to grocery or retailer having time to create that private label product. So if they're putting the time and effort towards it, it's definitely a growing piece of the business where like, you know what, we need to get on the action here too. And so seeing like Kroger and Whole Foods, are probably the two most notable looking at that market information still. We're double-digit growth in plant-based category. We're also seeing that increased penetration into mainstream groceries and not just in the specialty and natural markets. So looking at those channels, like we're seeing that they are expanding beyond just, the traditional channel, but plant-based is getting out there. It's on everything. In fact, I just saw on a box of crackers yesterday or the day before that, they even had a big label of plant-based on it, which just shows you how much it's getting you to be ubiquitous. So crackers are plant-based. So no doubt. Right. So that's what we're seeing as far as market behavior. Now we want to dig into the consumer behaviors. What are you seeing with the consumer that we can put next to this to really understand? Like looking at consumer behavior, there's a couple of different key points here that we're seeing when it comes to plant-based. And the three that we'll talk about quickly is, well, one, health and wellness focus. We're seeing people definitely focus in on their health and wellness. We're also seeing a sustainability play here as well. So sustainability and plant-based work really well together, and consumers are caring about sustainability. And the last thing is flexitarian. We're seeing a lot more consumers become flexitarian, and we're seeing that language out there a lot more. So those are three consumer behaviors when we think about plant-based and that trend on what we're seeing with consumer. Now, the threats to us is the risk of market saturation as more brands enter the space. We're not the only ones thinking about this right now. There are other brands out there that are considering going into a flexitarian type of portfolio. You're going to use plant-based. So how do we mitigate that risk of market saturation? And we need to balance innovation with also profitability, as production costs of plant-based items can be higher. So thinking about that's a threat. Like, yeah, we can create this amazing plant-based burger, but it's going to be 3 times the cost. And can we actually turn a profit on it? And does it make sense for us to actually do this? So that's the threat. And that goes a little bit deeper under the barriers to adoption, which we'll talk about next. And then lastly, the actions to consider. What should we do? Well, one, we should probably collaborate with R&D to create unique offerings. So we can work with R&D and marketing to start to collaborate on what those unique offerings look like and how might we message them, and really invest in the marketing that highlights sustainability and ethical benefits. So making sure that those are the things that stay marketing focused or forward. Then we get into the adoptions, the barriers to adoption or scale. And the first one is cost concerns, right? Plant-based items are going to be more expensive than your traditional items. So definitely a concern, something that we'll have to focus in on and figure out, how do we scale? How do we actually test this out and then find those costs for efficiencies? So it might be like because this is the adoption or the barrier to adoption, we probably should get somebody from finance involved and R&D involved early on, so they can start creating some models for us to say, this is how we do it. And this is what the threshold or the yield that we need to cover before we become profitable. This way we have that up front, right? So that might be something that we need to do early on, really early, just to get more people on board and to see if this trend actually makes sense for us to tackle. We then have taste and texture as another barrier to adoption. So some consumers still perceive plant-based products as inferior in taste and texture. But a burger does not taste the same as a plant-based burger usually, and the texture can be a little bit off from it as well. But 51% are doing it. So you have that. But basically, there may be some customers that will not purchase your product if you don't nail the texture or the taste, right? So it's making sure that you do enough work with your Q&A and make sure that you really get that hitting right. And then the cultural habits. So what are the resistance from traditionalists who are loyal to animal-based products? Will you be able to get those consumers involved with your brand? Will you be alienating them? Or are you still staying focused in on them with the traditional products, and then you're just moving into this flexitarian style product as well as an additional? So just making sure that you consider, how do you not alienate your traditional consumer? And then what's the future outlook? So looking at this trend of plant-based, we're looking at evolving tastes. So plant-based products will continue to mimic traditional flavors while also creating entirely new, bold options. Like we talked about that one brand, which was, it was Field Roast, right? Thinking about Field Roast and that brand and what they're doing with those flavors is definitely flavor forward, and it's thinking about the future. So it's thinking about the evolving tastes. We then have market penetration and as another additional future outlook that we have to consider, right? Expect plant-based products to expand into food service, meal kits, convenience channels. You're definitely going to be seeing it in gas stations if you don't see it there already. plant-based is only going to grow even further. And then sustainability focus. I think as this trend moves forward to the next 5 years, we're going to have a greater emphasis on the full life cycle of products, from sourcing to packaging to the appeal to eco-conscious buyers. The next one that I want to talk about is ethically sourced and natural options. So when we think about naturally sourced ethical options, what are we seeing in the market? So the first thing that we're seeing is like these emerging brands that are coming into market with ethically sourced. The first one I have to mention is Applegate. Applegate has done an amazing job of really focusing in on their messages for years, right? Of antibiotic free, all natural, really great claims. But they're also working on regenerative agriculture, and they have, a product line that's all regenerative agriculture. So that is something that we're seeing, like they're trying to ethically source. They are staying natural. They're doing amazing things there. But we're also seeing brands like Neiman Ranch also do the same thing as well. So it's not just Applegate that's at the table, was here, probably one of the first in the meat category or in the deli category of, ethically sourced and natural options. And then Organic Valley is another interesting one as well. And they emphasize claims such as antibiotic free, humanely raised, grass-fed, traditionally, and also transparency in their sourcing. So just seeing some really great things from Organic Valley. Now, Applegate President Joe O'Connor had a chance to come onto our podcast on Innovate on Purpose at the beginning of the season, and he was also discussing the importance of supporting regenerative agriculture with the lofty goal of turning the whole portfolio as such. So not only are they looking at, this one brand or this one category of, regenerative beef hot dogs, but they're looking to do this with their full brand. Very audacious goal, and they're super passionate about it, which is just absolutely amazing and important for us. So ethically sourced and natural is important in a lot of these organizations and something that we should be looking at. Then we're going to get down into the consumer behavior piece of this. And what we're seeing as some consumer behavior pieces is that, one, we're seeing that there is a demand for transparency. Consumers want transparency in their products and in the products that they're getting from their brands. Like it's really important. In fact, like think about like Vani, I'm probably going to mess up her name, but Vani Hari, the food babe, she's been focused in on creating she has a blog where she talks about just things that are happening that with our food that we need to look at a little bit closer, right? So she created like this march against Subway for using the same chemicals that are in yoga mats in their bread, and that was like 5 years ago or so, maybe even a little bit longer. But she, went viral on that. And then also on the Boar's Head case, which since I worked there was something that I worked on the inside when she was doing it. And she was talking about the 5 no's of Boar's Head, where there's no caramel coloring, where it's like in our products. And she was saying, hey, you need to clean your labels even more. And then she's showing examples of it. But she causes some noise because she wants transparency. So definitely really important. And then when we look at 2024 Nielsen IQ study, they stated that 79% of consumers are more likely to trust brands that share complete and easy to understand ingredient definitions. And the same percentage report greater loyalty to brands offering in-depth transparency beyond product labels. So definitely something that I noticed as well is that you'll see when there's that transparency, there's more brand affinity. So it's definitely something that's, I think, really important for consumers these days. Then we look at the health and wellness focus, which we talked about earlier. That lives here as well and ethically sourced in this trend here. So health and wellness, absolutely big focus. I'll go back to the deli too on this one here, but 75% of deli shoppers said they'd be more likely to purchase prepared foods if healthier options were available. And that comes from the International Dairy, Deli, and Bakery Association. So a big insight there. And then just even seeing what's happening in the political world with RFK, potentially taking over the FDA, where, he's talking about those cereals and saying, hey, look, these cereals here in the US have 15 ingredients, but in the UK, they have 3. What's the deal? Like, why are we putting this into our bodies? So really important for us to, think about that health and wellness and the transparency piece. And then the last thing is that sustainability. And we understand that we need to be more sustainable. In fact, consumers are expecting brands to do this on their own, and they will be more likely to shop your brand if you are sustainable. So it's super important. But I think one of the keys here when it comes to the consumer behavior piece of it, consumers expect you to do it. However, they're not exactly saying, hey, I need to do it. I might still use plastic straws, but I expect you to do something better with, giving me a better straw because I need a straw. And that's all it comes down to. But one of the interesting things here too, with the sustainability awareness and the messaging, there needs to be better consumer education on this piece of it, because what we're seeing with sustainability and like, these claims, like this one claim that was on water bottles that I saw recently was 100% or 98% ocean-bound plastic. And like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So I'm thinking about like these amazing boats that are out there pulling plastic from the ocean and making new fresh water bottles out of this. And that is totally not the case. In fact, ocean-bound plastic means any plastic that is recycled that was 50 miles away from shore is considered to be ocean-bound. But once it hits the ocean, it is no longer eligible to be recycled because it's contaminated, so it can't be used. So it's actually not saving all the plastic that's in the ocean, but it's the stuff that's 50 miles off at some landfill. So kind of misleading there. But there's that growing skepticism. So how do we as brands help drive consumer awareness and education on exactly how are we sustainable so they can support us best? And then what does this mean for us? There's an opportunity for innovation for sure when we think about this trend. So develop new products with verifiable sourcing stories, leverage organic and local partnerships. Packaging is a huge opportunity to limit resources. And then also thinking about your marketing communication. How can we highlight transparency and certifications prominently on the packages and in promotional efforts to build the trust with our consumers? And then how do we create a sustainability campaign educating consumers on how your brand is stepping up and how that's different from the rest? So that's the second trend. Now we're going to jump into this third trend. And the third trend is the tried and true convenience space. Convenience can mean so much. It could be, and we can go so many different directions with this, which is why before we start a session on convenience, we absolutely need to do a get smart. Otherwise, we're going to be like herding cats the rest of the day. So let's dive into convenience. What are we seeing in the market? So first is we're thinking, what are we seeing in the market? We're seeing prepackaged and ready-to-eat options. That is something that we're definitely seeing more and more of. Like if I look at the local public store in my neighborhood, I am seeing so much more square footage in the case dedicated to these prepackaged items. It keeps on growing and growing. Like I'm seeing like potato salad shrinking so they can add in more prepared meals. You're just seeing all these different ready-to-eat options that are out there. So definitely a lot more variety that we're seeing. So we're seeing an increase in grab-and-go deli meals like charcuterie snack packs, pre-sliced proteins, and heat and eat sides. That is absolutely evident. We're seeing retailers like Kroger and Whole Foods expanding those offerings to cater to the time-strapped consumer. We're even seeing more hot tables come back into stores. A lot more options. We're seeing just an expansion of SKUs in prepackaged and ready-to-eat options. And not just in deli, we're seeing it outside of deli as well, where there's just more meal options and convenience options. The dairy case is probably another great one where you're seeing like the Sargento snack packs. So lots of brands, lots of products. And then we have customized solutions is also what we're seeing in the market, right? So we're seeing self-serve kiosks and made-to-order options. So sandwiches and salads they're becoming more prevalent, and they're offering both speed and personalization with the kiosks and the made-to-order. But you're also seeing the prepackaged products as well expanding to the point where we're seeing just more options, not just like your turkey and cheese sandwich anymore, but it's like, pretzel bun, it's, ciabatta bread, but then it's also these special sauces and it has bean sprouts on it or alfalfa sprouts. There's just all these different options that are becoming more available because they're looking to appeal to consumers and their evolving flavor palette, the flavors that they're looking for. And then we're seeing cross-category innovations, which is really, I think, is awesome to see, is that collaboration of cross-category. So not only are you seeing like deli meat in a package, but you're also seeing, grapes or raisins. You're just seeing other products that are coming or other brands that are coming from other categories that are kind of doing this mashup in all departments. Now, what are we seeing with consumer behavior that supports this convenience trend in 2024, right? So we're seeing preference for time-saving options. And Morgan Stanley actually had a study that came out and said that 77% of U.S. consumers consider convenience, such as speed and accessibility, a key factor when making purchasing decisions. So 3/4 of the country are making their decisions based off of speed and accessibility. Totally, I agree with that. Looking at fast food drive-thrus is really an interesting kind of aspect of looking at this convenience factor. That's the initial or the foundation of convenience started at the drive-through. But when we look at, like, say, just the drive-through innovations that we're seeing, like with McDonald's, with multi-lines, and Chick-fil-A with putting people out forward with tablets to take orders, we're seeing people or seeing brands, especially the QSR space, looking to increase convenience even in a space that was once convenient. So that still needs to innovate because consumers are really looking for something that has speed and accessibility, and they're just were overwhelmed. So where now they have to actually expand that even further, right? And innovate further. We then have with consumer behaviors, health conscious choices. So consumers are increasingly prioritizing fresh, minimally processed foods, even in their convenience offerings. So just because it's convenient doesn't mean that they're willing to sacrifice on the health aspect of it. And that's something that we need to consider. So it's like looking in the deli space, 75% of deli shoppers say that they'd be more likely to purchase prepared foods if healthier options were available. So I think, again, huge stat from IDDBA, and that just states right there that consumers want healthier options, even in like the deli where not necessarily are things healthy. And then the last aspect in consumer behavior is the tech savvy shopping. So we're seeing customers become a lot more tech savvy with mobile ordering and delivery services for products, and including subscription snack packs, like, just like looking at nuts.com and so many others. People are much more tech savvy and they want their snacks super convenient. So if they can get it delivered and they can get it customized on an app, they're totally about it. And mobile delivery is something that's expected to continue to grow. In fact, it's expected to reach, this year was 38 billion in the US, the mobile delivery market. So something that is a huge space that we need to be thinking about. So if you're not in it right now, it's definitely something we should be thinking, right? What does it mean for us? Well, let's think about that, right? But also thinking about your retail strategy. Retail should be expanding the ready-to-eat product line. So how might we expand that piece of it? Brand collaborations. What brands should we be collaborating with? What other categories should we be collaborating with? And then the marketing opportunity. How do we highlight quality and convenience in this category? So not only is it fast, but it's also quality or it's healthy. What are the marketing opportunities that we have? Now, the barriers to adoption in the convenience trend is cost sensitivity. So one of the things when we think about convenience, it's probably going to be priced a little bit higher because convenience comes at a premium, right? But that can deter the price sensitive shopper. So how are we balancing that out with the price sensitive shopper, especially in economic downturns? And then we have this perceived freshness issue. So some consumers may view prepackaged items as less fresh or less quality than your traditional offerings that they would get from those products. Like if you go to a deli counter, you'd expect it to be fresh sliced and better, right? That's perceived freshness. Where if it's in the case, how long has it been there? It wasn't even sliced in the store. So thinking about that perceived freshness. And then also the sustainability concerns. Like when it comes to convenience, that means it's packaged. When it's packaged that way, that means it's going to be worse for the environment. So how do we make sure that we continue on our sustainability initiatives even while we're offering convenience? That's going to be important. So those are some barriers to adoption. So and what does that mean for the future outlook of this trend of convenience? I think we're going to start seeing some more scalable solutions. So as demand rises, we expect investment in more packaging innovations and supply chain efficiencies to allow us to be more convenient. We're going to see more customization and technology to really help enhance that personalization through digital kiosks and mobile apps. And then we're also, I think, going to see an expansion of LTOs. So because flavors are changing so much and evolving for consumers, like I mentioned, like with the sandwiches with alfalfa sprouts on them and on the pretzel roll, we're seeing all these different things kind of happening and changing so often. And I think we're going to see a lot more LTOs come out in convenience because we're going to have to test new things. We're going to have to give people what they want. So they might see a TikTok trend. Next thing you know, boom, there's this TikTok sandwich out in the case, which we can then test with consumers and then, build on that. So I think those are some future outlooks that we're looking at. And I don't think that's just for fresh brands like with the LTOs. I think it's also for center of store. We're going to be seeing a lot more LTOs there. And we're seeing it right now with so many different brands and these collaborations of brands. Like for some reason, the Coca-Cola Oreo drink just came to my head. But we're going to be seeing a lot more collaborations that are LTOs just to generate more consumer interest, even if that's not convenience, right? So I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that. So those were the three trends that we wanted to cover today. So we wanted to cover the trends of plant-based, convenience, and ethically sourced and natural. That's how we do it Get Smart. Now, the goal here was really to share with you this format of the Getting Smart piece of it. And it was to kind of go through some trends that I'll be looking at in 2025. I'm curious from your point of view, what are you looking at in 2025? What trends and how are you tracking those trends? Please feel free to go to the show notes here and then go and download the Get Smart forms for each of these three trends, plus the template so you can use it in your next workshop.
We have made it to the end of another episode. Thank you for tuning in. A couple of things before you go. If you have found value in this episode, I am sure you'll find value in what we have coming up. So please subscribe so you will have access and know when we launch the next episode. Also, leave a review. The more reviews we have, the further our reach becomes, and I truly want this to be heard by as many leaders as possible. Don't hog this all for yourself. I would love to hear your insights on this topic, so meet me on social media at Matt Mueller Innovation on LinkedIn and Instagram. And lastly, if you want to learn more about my story and what I can do for you and your company, go to themindfulinnovator.com. I would love to help you innovate on purpose. Until next time, just remember, bring a level of awareness to each conversation, each observation, each moment, and you can create great change in this world. Thank you.